Hi, welcome. I'm Sherry from Habermill Reading. This video is for you if you are the parent or a teacher or tutor and you are working with kids who struggle to know how to spell non-decodable, high-frequency words that they can't sound out based on what they know about letter sounds, but they need to know how to spell them. Words like said, what, does, goes, from. If you are working with a learner or a kid who's been spelling these words wrong for years, and you're at a place where you just need to learn a different technique about how to teach them how to spell these words. If memorization doesn't work for your learner, if you've tried all the tricks about coming up with little sayings, and if you've tried just a red letter technique or the words with heart parts, and that still isn't working, but you're wanting to look at a method that is still grounded in a multisensory approach, this video is for you. If your learner is still working on really early reading skills, like, for example, knowing the most common sounds for letters, if they're still working on that, if they're still working on skills like blending and segmenting, 3-letter words, CVC words, or consonant vowel consonant words, they're not ready to do this yet. So this video isn't quite yet for you, but still watch it, because when your learner is ready, this might be a great strategy for you to use. But if your learner is reading CVC words and you want to start working on spelling, specifically phrases or sentences, and you need them to be able to spell some of these really high frequency words and they're struggling to remember, then this video is for you. So when I'm talking about these spelling words, where do I get them from? These would be the words on the Dolch list or the Fry list. So those lists are very, very common words. They're organized in lists that younger children should be able to know how to read and spell. So if you go to those lists and you find the words that are non-decodable, meaning ones they can't sound out. So this wouldn't include words like at or in or on. This will be the tricky words, the words that have something different going on with them and they can't sound them out based on what they know. These are the words that I'm talking about. And when I teach this using this method, it's often because I've tried, or teachers or parents have tried other methods that are more common and they just aren't sticking. And we think we need to think outside the box here. And so that's what I'm going to show you today. It's a little bit of a strange method. It still is, it really still takes into account the heart part, or the part of the word that the student needs to know by heart, but we do it in a slightly different way. A lot of kids that I work with, the kids who have really severe or profound dyslexia, just looking at a word with a red letter isn't enough for them. It still is a random string of letters, and so they can't quite make a connection to the word. So this method might work for your learner if they're in that situation. So let me show you some of the words that we would typically work with. Here's a word, what. First, I would test the words. I would maybe go through 10 or 12 words on the Dolch list that are non-decodable and see which words the child struggled with, and they'll come back with a few of them. And so what I would do first is I use a Google slide. I would put this word on a slide and still make that red letter. So this child started this on April 4th, and the red letter, the letter that they had trouble with, is A. And usually in the word what, they're spelling it with a U. So I want to draw specific attention to that letter A, and I will make it red. And this is often how it's taught. If you're working with someone who's familiar with structured literacy, they'll really draw visual attention to that red letter. We do still want to use those same multisensory pieces. Typically what would be done is the student would see this word with the red letter. So visual, they want to make a visual memory for it. And then we'd want to do an auditory memory. We might say W-H-A-T spells what, and make that A louder. And then they would write that. And if you can get a gross motor in, some kids I would have punching that. W-H-A-T spells what, like a punch. And others, it might be a thump. You also want them to be writing the letter down, so they could be tracing it in the air. They could be tracing it in sound. They could be just pressing really hard on the desk. And so some kids, that's enough to get this word, but others, it's still not quite enough. So what do I do? This is when I would use a picture like this. Here's my letters, W-H-A-T. And this takes it from being an unknown string of letters to creating a little bit of a story. And I might ask them, what do you see in the tree? And what do we see? Oh, the W. Well, that makes sense. That's a bird. And I can see the W is, and I'm imagining the wings. The H, that looks like a little chipmunk, squirrel. That looks like a little creature. And I can see the H is the tail. And when I'm talking them through this, I will describe how the different letters will represent those different animals or creatures. A is my red letter. So when I'm talking about A, I will really make a point of describing and discussing how A is different. I will underline it. I will draw over the letter A. I'll say, here's an A. This is an owl. And, I hear a U when I hear that word, what? But a U wouldn't make sense because then the owl would have no head. Or I make some point of really distinguishing why only an A would make sense in this picture. And it's also not an O because look, this A, this sort of short stem of the A is the owl's feather. And then T is the tree. Move my face so you can see it. T is the tree. So this picture has been drawn. Maybe you don't want to do this picture. Maybe you want to come up with a different picture for your learner. Maybe they want to say something like, what time is it, Mr. Wolf? And they want to draw little characters for what time is it, Mr. Wolf? Or maybe what is for dinner? And W is, I don't know, maybe you make it into 2 slices of pizza. And H is maybe a fork. And A is a plate or maybe a bowl. And you would really have to pay attention. Oh, A, it's not just a circle. It's not an O. It's a bowl with maybe a utensil right next to it. And maybe you draw a spoon when you are describing that A, if this was going to be a plate. And here's the spoon. And you really want to draw attention to how this specifically is an A. And then T, well, I have to eat some vegetables with my meal. So maybe the T could be, 2 carrot sticks or something. And you would have your learner draw that. So what I do with this method is I will show the picture. I will say the sentence. For this sentence, it is, what do you see in the tree? Notice how I emphasize the word what. What do you see in the tree? If they have a dry erase board, or I'll give them a moment to draw this picture on the dry erase board or a notebook or on a blank piece of paper, it doesn't matter, on the back of an envelope, on a scrap, Post-it note, it doesn't matter what, but I want them to have a few moments to draw this picture out, really paying attention to the letters and the picture that is there. And I will prompt a few times while they're drawing it. What do you see in the tree? What do you see in the tree? When they're drawing it out, I will have them underline that A, that red letter, the letter that they had trouble with. Make sure you underline it. Make sure you make that letter darker. Really make sure that you emphasize the A. So I will say that cueing sentence, what do you see in the tree? I will then say the letters, W-H-A-T spells what? W-H-A, I emphasize the A, T spells what? I'm not saying the sounds of the letters. Remember, this word is non-decodable, so the sounds won't align with the letter sounds that they know. I will say the letters, W-H-A-T spells what? So we do that on the first day. Say this is the first day working on this. This is a Monday. And I'll have them draw that out. So they've got a visual. They've got the auditory of me cueing them, both with the sentence cue. What do you see in the tree? And W-H-A-T spells what? And then they have the kinesthetic of them drawing it out. They've had a moment to draw it out. Some of them will still punch that A red letter, W-H-A-T. I still want as much kinesthetic as we can get. So we'll do that on Monday. Often the first thing in the class, we'll go through 3 words and then we'll do something different, completely take our minds off of this word, do some reading and spelling or play some games. We'll come back to it 10 minutes later and I will give them the prompt. Let's spell the word what. What do you see in the tree? And they will write it out. I don't want them to type it. I want them to write it in the same place that they wrote it before. If they did dry erase board, write it on dry erase board. If they did it on a piece of paper, get a different piece of paper, write it out there. Actually write out the letters. Some of our kiddos who have really profound dysgraphia, this can be tricky. It doesn't need to be nice. It barely needs to be legible. I want them to be able to have that kinesthetic experience of writing out the letter. For those who have very severe dysgraphia, we'll move to typing faster because the writing for them will just be too tricky. But I want them to have that experience of spelling out the word without seeing the picture. And then we'll do that again and again. So they'll see it the first time on Monday, see the picture. The other 2 times we practice it, no picture. Then I'll see them again on Wednesday. I might show them the picture at the beginning of the lesson. I might not. So they'll have 3 chances on Wednesday to see it with a gap of, 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes in between each time, taking their mind completely off of it, working on something different. And often by that second lesson, I will say what, just with the same tone of voice, with the same intonation as I would have said it in the sentence itself, but not giving the whole sentence. So I'm pulling back on the cues, and they will finish the sentence for me. Do you see in the tree? And then they'll start writing out the letters. Oh yeah, that little owl I know that that's an A, and that's the tricky letter. I'll still have them underline that tricky A. So that's Monday, Wednesday. We do it again next week, Monday, Wednesday. And then by the last time on Wednesday, they're still doing this 3 times a session. I just say what, and they'll spell the word. That's all it takes. For most learners, it takes 4 lessons. Each lesson, they're spelling the word out 3 times that lesson. I do 3 words a lesson. We'll work on those 3 words, for 3 lessons, and then we move on. I will check on them again periodically. They will be embedded into phrases and sentences that the student is spelling through dictation. So it's not that they won't ever see them again, but even when they see them in the context of the sentence or the phrase that they're spelling, often they will be able to cue themselves. And what happens here? So this student, for example, started this word what on April 4th. I don't have their name here, but this is a slide for a student I was working with. They started on April 4th. They're a twice-a-week kid. So they retired this word on April 13th. I will check it again in a few months just to see that they've retained it. Most of the time students remember, but because we've been also using it in sentence and phrase dictation. But if they haven't remembered, we'll review the picture. We won't draw the picture out again, but we'll look at the picture. Oh yeah, now we remember. So it might take another review for 2 lessons in a few months from now. But typically at this point, they're able to apply it into the phrases and sentences that we're writing. And I usually give, little emojis or check marks. This would be the first week. So day 1, we just draw the picture. I write the start date. Monday, Wednesday, we get an emoji. And then Monday and Wednesday, and we retire it that day. So that's a very different method of teaching these non-decodable high-frequency words. If you are having trouble with your learner and are wanting to try a different technique, this might be a good fit for you. So it still emphasizes the kinesthetic, the auditory, W-H-A-T. We're still using the red letter strategy and that visual, but we're just giving it a little bit of a story or a little bit of a connection to something that's real and not just a string of letters that seems random to them. So some type of story that they can connect to and remember that makes sense. And it would be best if you could come up with these pictures on your own for different students. And many of the kids that I work with anyway are incredibly artistic. And so they might have really great ideas of what to come up with. There are lists that you can find out there, pictures of words, I'm sure, or these days, I'm sure you could also just ask AI to draw a picture for you. But I have a lot of fun with the learners that I work with, and this is what we do for some of these non-decodable words. So if this was really helpful, please send me a message, and I would love to connect on ways that this has worked for your learner, or if you have any questions about how you can implement this. So thanks for watching. If you like this video, follow my page to learn more.